The Marvel Bill of Rights. I saw this making the rounds on Twitter and I thought I'd talk about it. One of the things that bugs me about current Marvel is that they love to cite Stan Lee when they want to slap down fans, but they don't actually respect what Stan Lee stood for. He was a businessman, and he understood that no business succeeds for very long if it treats its customers like garbage. Stan also appeared to genuinely care about fans. It wasn't just that he wanted their business. It looks like he really did want people to read the books and enjoy them. That's where this Marvel Reader's Bill of Rights comes in. This is pure Stan Lee, totally the way that he would think. It's all about respecting the reader, the consumer, the fan. Respecting the fans. That's something current Marvel hasn't done in forever. I'm just going to go through these just so we can see how far mighty Marvel has fallen. Number 1. The right to an unlimited variety of reading entertainment. Yeah, that's not happening. Marvel is pretty uniform in the genres of the stories it publishes. They're limited to superheroes, a few space operas, and a handful of adventure stories. Even then, a ton of the books are really just slice-of-life stories pretending to be genre tales. They say they're about superheroes, but when you read them, it's just folks moping around talking, eating food instead of doing superhero things. But where Marvel has really failed is in its total lack of variety in presentation. Most of their stories have a distinct political angle, if not overtly in the script, then overtly with the creative teams. The far-left politics are now so common it's more surprising not to see them in a book. The art is pretty uniform too, with most of it being the same pseudo-pop art style that only hipsters and diversity in comics like. And the characters, how many times have you heard over the last 2 years that you could switch people's word balloons and not be able to tell the difference? If the characters got any more generic, they'd be a dollar store brand name. Number 2. The right to carefully crafted stories. Yeah, those days are long gone. Marvel's stories are so raw, they still have a pulse. Half the time they're not even properly edited, just a jumbled mess of plot points and devices that someone thought would look cool or piss off the right people. But let's continue. The right to carefully crafted stories that give you a fighting chance to understand what's going on when you plunk down your money. That hasn't happened since the mid-90s. Marvel's continuity is a total mess, almost as bad as DC Comics was back in the early 80s. You need at least 30 years of backstory in your head for many of these stories to make any sense, and even then that might not help since so many of the writers ignore the backstory and just write whatever the fuck they want. You should just put a sign on all the Marvel books that says, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." Number 3. The right to comment about every Marvel tale you read and to know that each of our editors values your opinion. Oh Stan, we're fucked. We're only 3 in, just 3 in, and Marvel's dry-boned them all. Seriously, when's the last time you heard of a Marvel editor valuing fans' opinions? Actual fans, I mean, not the Twitterati that bitch online every time they see a cover they don't like. Marvel editors give no fucks about fans like a fat feminist on a nudist beach. Nobody wants to see it, but it's impossible to miss. Number 4. The right to buy only the titles that interest you, and to shun any titles that fail to entertain you. You mean we're not racist if we don't want to buy anything about Riri Williams? We're not sexist if we don't want to buy Mockingbird? We're not homophobic if we don't want to buy Iceman? We're not transphobic if we don't want to buy whatever the hell it is they've done to She-Hulk? You mean we actually get to not only refuse to buy something, but to shun them? To, quote, persistently avoid, ignore, or reject through antipathy or caution books we don't like? You mean we get to roast them? To let other people know we don't like them? Oh Stan, you were and will always remain the man. Number 5. The right to fearlessly assemble in public to discuss Marvel Comics characters and creators. Okay, so this one is a little archaic because this really isn't a thing anymore, but older folks will remember that openly talking about reading comics when you were a kid would lead to an ass whooping. This was real bullying, not the someone said something mean on Twitter bullshit of today. This was when someone would corner you in a restroom and actually dunk your head in the toilet all because you read a comic book. Shit that would legitimately give someone anxiety. So it's great that Stan would say that you get to like and talk about comics without getting pummeled. Number 6. The right to address all Marvel editors and creative people by their first names. This is another oldie that isn't relevant today. Most people would call Marvel editors by their first names, but back in the day it was more common to use the last name. You wouldn't say Stan, you would say Mr. Lee. So what Stan's doing is putting everyone on the same level, which is cool for the time. Number 7. The right to be told what is currently happening in Marvel's mags and what is being planned for the future. Well, Marvel still does this, but what they plan is such a mess that it doesn't make much of a difference. You'd have a better chance of solving the anti-life equation than figuring out what the hell Marvel is planning and why. Their stuff is so convoluted they make Kingdom Hearts look like Little Red Riding Hood. Number 8. The right to practice scripting and drawing our Marvel characters for your own pleasure and amusement. Quick, somebody call Sean Gordon Murphy and tell him that he can start drawing Marvel characters again. For those who don't know, he got burned pretty bad by Marvel a few years ago when he drew the alphabet using Marvel characters. He was fine until he decided to make it into a book and sold it at a con. He actually gave one to a Marvel editor, and everything seemed fine until he got a letter from Marvel's lawyers threatening to sue him for copyright infringement. What they really wanted was the book to sell for themselves, but instead of asking Murphy if he wanted to cut a deal, they threatened to sue. They ended up kind of paying him for the book, but after that Murphy decided not to draw commissions with licensed characters. We haven't seen Marvel, or rather Disney, pushing this, but I can imagine this happening if someone created a comic or had very popular fan art featuring their characters. So for anyone out there who's thought, hey, I can make a better version of X-Men on my own, you could do it, just don't try to sell it and don't promote it on anything like YouTube where it's monetized because they will probably come after your ass. Number 9. The right to submit your best work to Marvel for consideration and know that the time and talent you have invested will be given the attention it deserves. Well, those days are over. Marvel shut down its open submission policy years ago, back in 2007 I think. The only way you're getting your work in front of Marvel is if Marvel comes to you, which usually means building a name for yourself through self-publishing, or more likely that you belong to the right identity group. Then it won't matter whether you have a lick or talent or skill. If you have the right complexion, orientation, neurological disorder, or fucked up politics, you're in. How nice would it be though if Marvel did take open submissions again? Blind submissions, where the person's info is nowhere to be seen by whoever's reviewing it. They'd have no choice but to judge it on its merits. That'd be awesome, which is why it won't happen. Number 10. The right to expect Marvel will always maintain a dedication to quality. Failed that one. A commitment to decency. Totally failed that one. And a sense of humor about everything we do. Yeah, you'd have an easier time finding Gail Simone's sense of humility than anyone with a sense of humor running Marvel. Hell, at this point, Marvel is the joke. None of the people running Marvel poke fun at themselves, and they get really pissy if someone does it for them. This is what happens when you put the perpetually offended in positions of power. There's no joy in anything that they do, just spite and hate and moralizing. But imagine what Marvel would be like if they held themselves to Stan Lee's standards. How cool a company would Marvel be if they listened and respected their readers, wanted to know what people liked and didn't like, and wanted to see which of their readers had the talent and skill to tell fantastic stories with awesome characters. The world may never know.